Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of Cloud with Chris. You're with me, Chris Reddington, and here we talk about all things cloud. So thank you for joining me again this week. We are now on vlog number 10. Can you believe 10 weeks of doing these weekly vlogs? The time has absolutely flown by, but I'm really enjoying doing them. So thank you for listening in, and please continue liking and subscribing, as it's really appreciated. So you probably noticed something new this week. I haven't got a big microphone over to the side of me here anymore. I've got this microphone just directly in front of me, very close to my mouth. So I've got a brand new microphone this week. I've got the Shure SM7B. It's been something I've had my eye on for a while, and it's actually my birthday this week. So I figured, why not treat myself and go ahead and get a new microphone. So it was a year of Cloud with Chris on March the 1st. So celebrating my birthday. So I figured, why not? So hopefully you noticed the audio difference, the quality there. It is noticeable from some of the testing that I did. So hopefully you enjoy that. Let me know in the comments or on Twitter what you think all about that. So let's go ahead, jump in, because there is a lot to cover today, because of course there was Ignite last week, this little conference that Microsoft does every so often. So just want to talk firstly about what happened with Cloud with Chris over the last week, what's coming up, and then we'll jump straight into the Ignite content, which will be the majority of this vlog today. So first off then, if we just go ahead, last week was vlog number 9. So of course that was the date where it was 1 year of Cloud with Chris. There were quite a lot of notes around Azure retirements for us to keep up to date on. So if you haven't looked at the Azure updates page recently, go and take a look at that. And of course, that was in the past where Microsoft Ignite hadn't quite happened yet. So again, lots covered in last week's episode there. Then on Wednesday, I released a second part of my series of blog posts here around using GPG keys to sign Git commits. So this one goes a little more in depth, hands-on, about how you go ahead and generate some of those keys to be used. The next part 3 will be out this week. We'll be talking a little bit more about how you use those with Git and how you then go and upload those to GitHub then as well. And then also on Wednesday, released episode number 2 of my Cloud Gaming Notes series. So Cloud Gaming Notes, as I mentioned before, is something that is a bit of a passion area of mine. I'm really passionate about gaming. I'm not the best of gamers, I will be honest, but it's interesting how cloud is influencing gaming. It's interesting how cloud is really changing what games can do. Think about things like Flight Sim, for example, we've talked about previously on the show. So in this episode, I'm joined by Lee again, and what we talk about here is matchmaking and how important it is to cloud gaming as a service rather than, I'm joining a specific server. So again, talking about how cloud is influencing that there, talk a bit around DevOps, LiveOps, and we'll be once again doing another episode next month where we'll be talking and playing about Sea of Thieves and talking about things like inventory and economies inside of gaming there. Next up then, on Friday, so it was a busy week last week. On Friday, we had the sidecar and the ambassador patterns. So once again, joined by my partner in crime, Peter Piper, another great episode where we both had a ton of fun filming that one, actually. There's a little bit of bingo in there, so get your bingo cards out. We get some of those key phrases and keywords out there that you may have heard across a number of the different API-focused episodes from Peter and I. But again, a very, very fun episode there to film, and hopefully that comes across when you listen to that as well. Now, next up, on Saturday then, so yes, it was a very, very busy week. Saturday, I presented at the Limerick .Net Azure User Group. So thank you, Carl. Thank you, team, for having me. Really enjoyed delivering that session. Really enjoyed being there. That is on YouTube. So if you go visit cloudwithchris.com, you can go ahead, take a look at that session. And it's just a session about really how I do Cloud with Chris and how I go ahead use GitHub Actions. Now, it's something I'm going to be evolving over time. I am presenting that at a few different user groups, and I don't want to deliver the exact same talk twice. I am going to tweak things slightly and focus on certain areas and other areas where it makes sense. And of course, keep learning as I'm delivering these talks as well. So any feedback, if you like it, if you think there's other areas where we maybe should go and focus in on, please let me know. Would love to hear the feedback. So then, what's coming up in terms of talks? Well, on March the 18th, we've got the Welsh Azure User Group, and I'm going to be delivering a very consolidated version of the how GitHub can help in planning, building, and deploying a podcast or blog site. On March the 25th, then, I'm discussing DevOps on the MSHowTo live show with Mert once again. And then actually, the next one will not be DevOps Nuts. I've got another one coming in before. I just need to update the website to show that correctly. And I'll be joining a particular user group in the beginning of April. I don't think I'm spoiling any surprises as I say this, actually. On April the 6th, I believe it is, the Northern Azure User Group have another meetup. And I'm particularly excited about this one. I'm going to be delivering the GitHub content again that I delivered in the Limerick Dotnet Azure User Group. And as I say, focusing that content and delivering certain pieces there. But this one is going to be interesting and exciting for so many reasons, mainly due to the fact that actually the first speaker that they have at that event is Scott Hanselman. So I feel like, you know, Scott Hanselman is the headline and I'm like the support act at a gig somewhere. So this is going to be really exciting. So thank you for having me, folks. I know we were looking at maybe doing a bit further out, but schedules aligned and it works really well. So thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to being along for that one as well. So that's it in terms of the talks. Just in terms of what's coming up this week, not a lot this week. We mentioned about the extra Git and using GPG keys blog, part 3, using that using that on Wednesday. And then on Friday, we're going to have the cache aside patterns. So looking at how you go and use a cache and keep that populated and up to date. So again, another of those cloud design patterns there. Good. So let's go ahead now and jump over to the book of news. I always like to call it something else, like the Book of Dreams or something. I don't know. It feels very sci-fi like. But the Book of News. So this is something that is released every single Ignite, I guess. I think it's every single Ignite. But it's a regular occurrence anyway, because there's just so much news coming out that they need to consolidate it somehow. And even the Azure Updates page just gets so loaded in terms of all of the different content that's coming out. It needs to be a nicer way of structuring that. So that's the intent behind this Book of News piece here. So by no means am I covering every single update here. We're not going to be able to do that just in the time that we have and to the degree that we'd want to cover it. But I'm just going to give you a few of my thoughts, a few of my insights on where I thought things were quite interesting from Ignite here. So first off then, semantic search capability in Azure Cognitive Search. If you've used or not aware, there is a service inside of Azure called Azure Cognitive Search, bringing really the best of Azure Search as was and cognitive services together into this really rich experience. So you can build some great search services inside of your applications. And there are some enhancements there to deliver results based on user intent rather than things like the keyword-based searches. So that was quite an interesting addition to Azure Cognitive Search there. So if you're looking at building search into your application, go and take a look at that one. A particularly interesting one from my perspective was Azure Machine Learning. Of course, Azure Machine Learning has been around for quite some time, but now it's available in a hybrid world. So Azure Arc now supports Azure ML. So think about the power of that for a moment, because we all think about machine learning and the power that it has, you know, with data, being able to build models and your intelligence around that, right? But sometimes you might have scenarios where the data can't leave your on-premises environment. Think of like a healthcare environment or maybe a financial services environment. Well, now you can go ahead and do that on your own environment using something like Azure Arc. So I think that is a really, really cool update, a really clever update, and one to watch, actually. I think that is going to create some waves there. Next up, we have Azure Cache for Redis. So Azure Cache for Redis has been around for some time. There have been a number of different tiers available. And in the Ignite updates, there is a new set of tiers, Enterprise and Enterprise Flash tiers. So again, additional capabilities that you can get there, pretty much focused around, I believe, as it says there, kind of Flash tiers. I'm assuming it's to do with the storage that is being used under the covers there. So new tiers, and of course, use your requirements to determine whether that's a right fit for you. But one of the interesting things about those tiers is that now you can go and use active geo replication across regions for your Redis instances. So think about those scenarios before where we've talked about like the geode pattern, for example, and maybe you've got some kind of multi-tenant app or maybe some kind of app that it makes sense to maybe distribute the cache across regions. Well, now you can go ahead and do that with these tiers. Very interesting scenarios start being unlocked here, I think. Now, next up, we have a couple of updates relating to Azure Cosmos DB, one of which is the Azure Cosmos DB continuous backup and point in time is now available in preview. And I think we may have updated on that one a little while ago there, but again, called out here in the updates. And then Cosmos DB roles-based access control as well is now available in preview. Again, a great update when you consider the likes of Azure Key Vault, Azure Storage. Azure Cosmos DB is now joining the fold. The fact that your data plane can now be controlled by role-based access controls. A very, very great update there. Very, very pleasing to see that one come in. Let's see here. New regions available. So Microsoft is adding a data center region in China, in northern China there it says. So again, additional services coming to that. And the one that particularly interested me here around these kind of data center updates is this service called Azure Resource Mover. Now, Azure Resource Mover, I think, has been in preview for some time now. But now it's generally available. And the idea behind Resource Mover, clue is in the name. If you want to go and move some resources, you use that tool, but it's for moving resources between regions. So think about the scenario where maybe you've been on Azure for some time or in the last few years, and maybe a new region has come online, and it makes a bit more sense from your requirements perspective to go into that region. Well, that's the idea behind Azure Resource Mover, being able to go and easily move your resources across those regions there. Next up then, we have here the Azure Communication Services. And this one I am a big, big fan of. If you haven't had a chance yet, go ahead, take a look at one of the videos on the Ignite talks that are available. It's like an introduction to Azure Communication Services or like an update. I can't remember the exact name, but a really, really great talk. And the reason why I think it's such a great talk is they talk about in that update, as it talks about here on this blog post, not blog post, but the book of news, is the updates that Teams and Azure Communication Services are interoperable. Meaning, if I'm like Contoso as an organization, and maybe we do, let's say we're a retailer, or let's say we're in healthcare, maybe we provide a platform for doctors to speak to their patients, for example. Your end users, so the shoppers or the patients, whoever they are, for example, can go ahead, use Azure Communication Services through some kind of portal. And on the back end, you can have your end users using the tools like Teams that they know and love already and connecting those two users together seamlessly. I think that is so, so powerful. And it's actually a really exciting opportunity for many different industries to really enhance that end customer experience. So again, that's another one to watch. I'm particularly excited about what's happening there in the Azure Communication Services space. Next up then, we have the .NET Upgrade Assistance, so helping developers move large mission-critical .NET framework-based Windows applications to modern cross-platform alternatives like .NET Core 3.1 or .NET 0.5. So I think that's a great tool if you're a .NET developer, good one to be aware of, because that actually went under the radar for me until I read this set of news. So hopefully that shines some light on that one for anyone who may have missed that as well. We've mentioned it previously, but the private Azure Marketplace, that is now available as well for you to go and use. It was in preview from September 2020, and according to the Book of News here, is now generally available as well. So again, quite a nice scenario there for you to be able to govern that within your own internal environment. Now, Azure Arc, there was a ton of updates. Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes is now GA. So if you want to go ahead and manage your Kubernetes clusters in an on-premises environment, that's now generally available. So you can use Azure Arc to do so. We've already talked about the machine learning side as well. But once again, it goes ahead and talks about the fact that Azure Arc enabled machine learning is now in preview as well. What else? There was some good compute updates, particularly around the virtual machine scale set side of things. So one of the interesting things I thought was this kind of flexible orchestration model. And what it explains it as here, if I just read it out word for word, this thing is now in preview, by the way. Azure Virtual Machine Scale Sets help customers simplify the deployment, management, and scalability of their applications while increasing high availability. Customers may now change VM sizes without redeploying their scale set, resulting in greater operational agility. Customers will also be able to mix spot virtual machines and pay-as-you-go VMs within the same scale set to optimize costs. I think that is going to be super powerful as well. When you think about that journey that a lot of organizations are going on, some are probably going to lift and shift first. Some might want to go ahead and deploy into a set of virtual machines, for example, their application before they move to PaaS. This gives some really interesting room to be flexible in that deployment approach there as well. And once again, there's another reminder here about Azure Cloud Services having extended support. There is now the kind of alternative version of Cloud Services where it's deployed using the ARM-based deployment model rather than ASM, which is the Azure Service Manager model, which was used in the older days of Azure, let's say. What else? Disk updates. So Azure Premium SSD and Standard SSD offers zone redundant storage. I thought was quite a good update there. Some updates to the performance tiers of Azure Premium SSD, and a really nice quality of life improvement here is around the auto key rotation of customer managed keys for your managed disks there. This, I think, has been one of those challenging areas in the past. You know, if you need to go and update the keys, for example, that are being used to go and encrypt your disks if you're using your own keys, well, now there is a nice solution automatically available for you. It goes ahead and actually translates then the information that is encrypted to use the new key. Talks all about that in the updates there, but certainly one worth taking a look at if that is you. In terms of migration tools and support, I have to give this one a shout out. Azure Migration Program, or AMP, is including a number of additional workloads, including a number of modernization scenarios. So .NET, Java, and LAMP stack apps, for example, and they can be modernized to things like AKS or App Service, etc. My team previously that I was in were quite a big driver behind the AMP program, and Fast Track for Azure, of course, is the next listed option on that page. Talks about some of the additional workloads or services that are now available. So one which talks about cloud native applications and being able to use things like OpenShift. So really focusing on that cloud native story, and then support for hybrid scenarios like Azure Arc as well. So again, really focusing in on some of these big announcements that are coming out here and supporting those. Next up, networking. Networking, there's some nice additional options available here. For example, some updates around the load balancing side of things. There are some updates there around the public IP SKU upgrades, being able to upgrade from the basic to the standard SKU. We've talked about that in the past as well. And the network routing preference. Now, there was actually a really interesting update. I think it was called the Azure Routing Service. And this particular service, from what I was reading, it sounds like that you can go ahead, if you've used NVAs previously, network virtual appliances, you had to have a standard load balancer in the front of those NVAs to go and manage the high availability. But now, because of the way the service works with BGP and a number of other things, you could potentially go ahead and use that as the front, but as the front material inside of your NVAs there, and use the routing of this routing service. So really interesting tool and service there. Some additional pieces, Azure Front Door, we've talked about. There's a new preview of that available, and Azure Firewall Premium, I think we mentioned in last week or the week before as well. But again, check those out. Now we're coming to some of the more interesting scenarios here around IoT. Or AI first. Moving closely on to IoT, of course, because those two concepts are usually quite tightly coupled together. Azure Percept was quite an interesting set of updates there. A nice, comprehensive, easy-to-use platform where you can go ahead and build AI models on these kind of low-power edge devices. Particularly interesting then, some of the updates around Azure Percept Studio, for example, a development kit there, being able to use all of those bits and pieces. So if you're in that space, looking at how you build some of that artificial intelligence on those edge devices, that could be an interesting service for you. From a mixed reality perspective, a couple of updates. Azure Remote Rendering is now generally available, and then Azure Object Anchors is now available in preview as well. And of course, that leads us nicely on to Microsoft Mesh. Wow. I mean, have I got it here? No, it's in the other room, unfortunately. But I was fortunate to go and watch the keynote live using my VR headset. So I've got an Oculus Quest 2. And it was quite fun. I felt like the naughty school kids in the back of the class because I was, kind of half watching the keynote and then half just waving at randomers who were also watching the keynote. I got a lot of friendly faces waving back. So that's, my social interaction done in these COVID lockdown times. But what they announced with Microsoft Mesh and this kind of power that you have in terms of being able to communicate across these different platforms, etc., and communicate and solve problems. And this idea that Microsoft is trying to empower every person and organization to achieve more, it just kind of blew my mind, this whole virtual reality vision that they have. And I really, really like the direction of where things are going. It just shows the innovation behind the company there. So that was a particularly interesting set of announcements there. And then there were a number of updates around virtual desktop as well. I'm not the biggest of virtual desktop subject matter experts, so I'm going to skip past that one, but definitely check those out if you are interested or using virtual desktop at all. One of the things we've updated on in the past is some of these announcements around specific clouds for different industries. So there is this public preview coming for maybe some of my newer followers with my new role might be interested. Microsoft Cloud for Manufacturing. So empowering this kind of end-to-end scenarios, finding efficiencies as you go and innovate and think about that end-to-end supply chain, for example. There are similar scenarios for financial services, retail, and non-profits as well. Now, from a security perspective, quite a number of updates again. There were some various training pieces updated in there. But one of the interesting pieces that I thought, and I only spotted this, by the way, as I was going through this book of news again, is some updates relating to Azure Key Vault and the fact there is a fully managed, highly available single-tenant key management service with FIPS 142 level 3 validated hardware security modules. So that is actually now in preview. So again, another enhanced version of using Key Vault. So if your requirements drive you to have some of that level of compliance, then that's there for you. In preview, of course. What else? There were some updates around confidential computing and being able to use confidential queries with Azure SQL DB, and that's in preview for SQL Server 2019 as well. That was quite interesting. And then Trusted Launch, which provides protection against things like bootkits, rootkits, kernel-level malware, is available for both confidential and non-confidential virtual machines. So again, some really interesting innovation there happening on the security side. Several updates around the Azure AD side of things. So the ADFS Activity Insights report, for example, available in the Azure portal, new secure hybrid access integrations, passwordless authentication, for example, a number of updates, for example, around conditional access authentication, number of different updates there on the Azure AD side of things. So yeah, lots and lots of news there. Go ahead, digest that. By no means was that meant to be an in-depth review of all the different announcements, but it just gives you a bit of an insight into what was there and what was announced. So finally, we're just going to go ahead and move across to GitHub very quickly. And there's one blog post that I want to go and show in this particular episode. And that is this blog post, 4 things you didn't know you could do with GitHub Actions. And the 4 things they talk about are compressing images for the web with GitHub Actions. They talk about generating semantic release notes with GitHub Actions. Run your GitHub Actions like a makefile. That one sounds quite interesting. I need to look into that one. Haven't quite seen that one yet. And then bring your own environment for GitHub Action workflows. So interestingly, the talk that I give around GitHub and how I use it with Cloud with Chris, I cover 2 of those 4 points. So the compressing images for the web and also using the environments and using secrets in those environments as well. So it was really interesting just seeing that and going, oh, okay, I talk about those things as well. It was quite a nice moment of realization of the journey that I've been on with GitHub Actions as well. So again, if you're interested in GitHub Actions, go ahead, take a look at that one as well. Good. So with that is what I wanted to cover really overall for this session. Lots of Ignite news, lots of updates in terms of what's coming with Cloud with Chris. You know what to do. If you like this episode, please go ahead, please hit the like button, hit that notification bell and subscribe. Hitting that notification bell means you will know as soon as I put out new content. And wow, do I have content for you, because I am fully booked up until mid-July, and I've just accepted a number of additional guests onto the show, which will take me into August. And I've already got a few other pieces in the works, as well as the mini-series, different pieces that I'm working on alongside all of that as well. So wow, there is tons of content coming out. And of course, I am talking at several meetup groups that I've mentioned. There's the Welsh Azure User Group coming up on March the 18th. There's the MSHowTo show coming up later in the month. And after that, of course, we'll be talking at the Northern Azure User Group on April 6th, where Scott Hanselman will also be talking. And I'm going to keep saying that because I'm super excited to feel like I am on the same bill as Scott Hanselman. Feel like I've made it. So if you like the content, I am on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and of course YouTube. If you're not following me yet on Twitter, please follow me there. I am sharing some of these news and updates and pieces on Twitter as well. And wherever you like to consume the content, please hit like, please hit follow or subscribe so you can get the latest and greatest. And that really helps encourage me to make even more content for you. So with that, thank you so much for tuning in today. It's always appreciated. Stay safe, stay healthy, and until next time, bye for now.